There's only one beer left. Rappers screaming all in our ears like we're deaf. Tempt me, do a number on a label. Beat up all the MCs and drink them under the table like it's on me. Put it on my tab, kid, however.
Howdy ho, you beautiful bastards. So here we go. Finale of the series. Anyways, we finally almost redeemed,
or if you prefer,
avenged ourselves. Yet there is still the main bad guy on a loose. But before we'll go full Scooby-Doo after our daddy, there is still something left that I'd like to talk about. The timeline of Soul Reaver is one very convoluted thing, and it will even get more complicated with all of the time-traveling mumbo-jumbo from the first Blood Omen and the mumbo-jumbo that still is up to be touched upon. Nonetheless, the only thing we have to keep in mind right now, the distance between Blood Omen 1 and Soul Reaver could roughly be estimated in 2 eons. Well, in real life, we didn't have any vampire overlords treating us like cattle, we've handled the job ourselves. Yet anyway, from what we had in the first Blood Omen, I'd boldly presume that the people of Nosgoth were at around 9th century development level. The guillotine from the 18th century as well as the 12th century's Gothic architecture could be attributed to the creative imagination of the authors. To jump from that development level to the electric bulbs and flamethrowers, in the real life we had to wait for around 1000 years, give or take. And with all due respect to the circumstances in which people of Nosgoth lived, I couldn't really get why developers put so many years between the events of both games. Such degradation could be achieved in just a few decades. Check the post-Soviet countries if you don't believe me. So why people that did so many historical references and actually know how history works would make such a giant gap between the events was beyond me. But I couldn't just accept an easy answer like, this is just a game, they randomly chosen a plausible number to show how bad the things were, blah blah blah. Nah. So let us delve deeper into the topic. From the prelude for the first Soul Reaver, the developmental situation in the Reich of Kain is not very clear. Yet it's pretty sunny, so either they didn't have a roof by the time of the video and built it later, or there should have been some high-tech LED lights inside. But it was an off-topic, sorry. We have some parts of lore from the miscarried Nosgoth multiplayer and Dead Sun projects. They shed some light on the siege right after Kain's brutalization of Raziel and his ginormous vacation afterwards. As already told in the third video, Tyrell was kind of a Newton of the vampire race. The small trailers for the location of Nosgoth multiplayer would allow us to marvel at the achievements of the second Kain's son. I mean, just take a look at this. The forges are fucking gigantic, not to mention the level of resilience that metal should have to transport fucking lava. Such alloy would be in the category of alien technologies itself. Not only that, they achieved such level of progress where some means of production are pointed to the aesthetical side of the place, with them golden snake statues with flowing lava and the titanic statue of Tyrell himself sitting on a volcano. To revert the forces of nature to your side and put a statue of yourself on top of it is firstly very technologically innovative and secondly fucking badass and has a great energy. It's still in question if the society under Kain was prosperous or not, because such architectural madness is either allowed by societies with so much money they don't know where to put it, or by tyrants. And I suppose we know to which form of governance would an immortal all-powerful beings be attracted to. I also love the fact that Tyrellim stages here highly resemble the stages of social realism, just so you wouldn't doubt that vampires are the bad guys here. Anyways, it has taken the Kain's empire around a millennium to come to what we see in the forges. Seems plausible. The weird thing about it was the absence of any kind of electrical lights or something similar at the location, where at the same time we have humans with fucking guns and flamethrowers. Having this soup of variables boiling inside of my head, I came to such conclusions. The most advanced vampires ever gotten to, judging by what we have at hand, was the Turalim Forge. And indeed, why would a vampire need an electric bulb? They have dark vision. Flamethrowers and pistols are not needed as well, they have magic. If we think about it, almost all great societies were born out of necessity and stress from outside. What kind of stress could have an immortal being sitting on the top of a food chain? It makes a perfect sense. Even now we have a lot of old farts lobbying their own interests in order to prevent any kind of progress. Now give this old fart an immortal life and full power and they will preserve the status quo for the whole time of their reign. So an eternity. The humans, on the other hand, are more peculiar. Just like the humans in the wild, they had to protect themselves from predators, so hand cannons come in handy for such a purpose. To come to think of it, all of that nerdy technologies could only be seen near the habitats of people. The Chad vampires just live at pretty, by vampire standards, gigantic keeps. By them pistols and shotguns at the possession of man, I'd boldly presume that by the times of Kain-Raziel's execution, the technologies of humans were at around 18th, 19th century level, which was exactly 1,000 years after the times of the first blood omen. Super logical, no questions asked. Going very far forward, or kind of backwards, we could add the events of Blood Omen 2, which took place 400 years after the first Blood Omen, where Kain has gotten into an actual industrial reality, and not delving deep into the why of it, but people of Nosgoth were developing themselves even more rapidly than we were IRL. After all of that, we come to the realities of Soul Reaver, where around 1000 years have passed since the times of the multiplayer game and Razi's second death. And we can see the same good old technologies that we saw in the Blood Omen 2, or what was left of them. So by this we can deduce a few things. There was a giant technological leap between the first Blood Omen and 400 years after. Conveniently, Kain and other vampires were almost nullified during those times, so good old people grew like moth on a humid day. Then came the vampires and put progress on a relative halt, made a few tyrannical, crazy and, let's be honest, beautiful structures, went to fuck each other up, and reduced themselves to grotesque zombies. So most of human progress in the game was made in just 400 years, and for 1.5 millennia people tried to at least hold the same level of it, although there were no guns and flamethrowers in Blood Omen 2, so that's why I said most of the progress. Yeah, after all of this mind gymnastics, 1000 years of weird stagnation at the beginning turned into 1500 years of weird stagnation, with some fun unhinged vampire projects here and there. And the why of it lies in the distinctive features of vampires. They don't really need any kind of growth because there are no reasons to grow in the first place. We haven't really gotten to a new conclusion, but I need to make content, you know. All of this chatter on the matter of technologies was made to smoothly lead you to maybe my favorite example of the human tech, the Lighthouse. Even after all of this time, the light inside is still at work. You just need to move a few fucking enormous cubes to make it run, just like anything in this game. I like the concept of the water mill that produces electricity in order for the lighthouse to work. Just like the concept of it very much. Moving from Duma's bulwark, we enter the lair of Möbius, the Oracle's cave. By the way, Duma from the Old Testament could also mean a name of an oracle, so yet another tie to the Old Testament, considering that the cave is literally a few steps away from Duma's lair. Möbius was the guardian of time and the guy who tricked Kain into killing William the Just before he became Nemesis, preventing him from becoming a tyrant, giving people of Nosgoth a heroic monarch who perished at the hand of a vampire, conveniently giving them reasons to slaughter the aforementioned vampires. Because of the time Guardian, the first human-descended vampire, and the smith of Soul Reaver, Warador, was also killed. Actually, a lot of vampires were killed because of him. As you can see, he wasn't really fond of them. Well, anyways, Kain killed Nemesis even before he became Nemesis, then fucking killed Möbius, making an alternative timeline where we are situated at the moment, by the way. I've told you about the time-traveling mumbo-jumbo. The location itself is also peculiar. Crystals on the walls give that spiritual girly vibe. What's not to say about the inhabitants of the place? Turulin. As you might have noticed, they usually serve as the top guardians of important places like Seraphim Tom, for example. The other thing are the images on the walls of it. Here we have a winged creature with a covered face, sporting a sword and having tentacles instead of legs. A fat nod to Raziel in the surface of the Elder God. The other creature is, well, I don't know. Might be Kain, who represents death and degradation with that skull mask, but that's too stretched out even for me. Let's just leave it a mystery.
The Oracle's Cave, where Kain's first fateful meeting with Möbius occurred. Möbius played the role of a doddering soothsayer, stirring his pot of visions while dispensing enigmatic predictions to gullible visitors. Underneath the facade was Möbius the Time Streamer, sorcerer of the Circle of Nine, a ruthless manipulator with the power to bend time. Since his murder at Kain's hands centuries ago, these caves have stood vacant, though, like Möbius himself, they are rumored to be only a facade for a much larger, more elaborate complex. I sensed that Kain was here, and at that moment, I would have plumbed the depths of hell to find him. This, I deduced, must be the man himself, the Time Streamer, Möbius. He seemed not at all the impressive figure I had imagined from Kain's boasted exploits. And yet, even this cold image radiated a certain undeniable power.
Raziel, if you only knew. With a few manipulations, we enter the Chronoplast, the tool with which Möbius could influence time. There is not much to say about the place. The design is pretty cool. The riddle with the clan banners was even fun, I guess. Although the presence of banners in this chamber would mean that Möbius even knew which banners the spawns of Kain would choose. He even knew their favorite colors. How sweet of him. After going inside, we can see what has already happened and what developers thought would happen during the alpha plans. And with how genius Hemihennig played over these events in the future games, I think they left this part on purpose. And finally, the catharsis of the whole game. We meet Kain for the final time in Soul Reaver. In my opinion, theatrical dialogues are the most beautiful part of the game. That's why I tend to leave them inside of the videos uncut. Yet here it takes around 4 minutes, so I will just put a prelude video from Soul Reaver 2, where the aforementioned dialogue is cut to 3 minutes without losing the main idea. And it goes much harder than these upscaled monstrosities.
At last. I must say I'm disappointed in your progress. I imagined you'd be here sooner. Tell me, did it trouble you to murder your brothers?
Did it trouble you when you ordered me into the abyss?
Eternity is relentless, Raziel. When I first stole into this chamber centuries ago, I did not fathom the true power of knowledge. To know the future, Raziel. To see its paths and streams tracing out into the infinite. As a man, I could never contain such forbidden truths. But each of us is so much more than we once were. Do you not feel with all your soul how we have become like gods? As such, are we not indivisible? As long as a single one of us stands, we are legion. Our futures are predestined. Mobius foretold mine eons ago. We each play out the parts fate has written for us. Free will is an illusion.
I found the tomb of Sarafan, Kain. How could you profane a priest by turning him into a vampire?
How could I not? One must keep his friends close, Raziel, and his enemies even closer. Who better to serve me than those whose passion transcends all notions of good and evil?
The Sarafan were saviors, defending Nazgul from the corruption that we represent. My eyes are open, Kain. I find no nobility in the unlife you rudely forced on my unwilling corpse.
You may have uncovered your past, but you know nothing of it. You think the Sarafan were noble, altruistic? Oh, don't be simple. Their agenda was the same as ours.
Here we go again. By discovering this machine, we can partially understand the why of Kain's fatalism. He understood that his fate was predestined, so that's why he left his kingdom. He knew that any kind of resistance would end up in vain. This, in his opinion, should explain his indifference toward his domain and the execution of Raziel. For him it was a part of a bigger picture, presumably. The main question is if Kain discovered Chronoplast before or after Raziel's execution. It wouldn't be not in Kain's character to kill someone who has even the minutest flick of power that could end his reign, though then it would mean that every next game and the great scheme of them would just be a coincidence, so I wouldn't advocate for the Maniac Kain theory. There is of course the Sarafan question left, but this topic I would want to leave for my future self, when we will get to the second Soul Reaver eventually. Raziel takes, per usual, the "I don't give a fuck what you say, I made up my opinion and I just want to kill you" position, and I can respect that considering everything that happened. But let's jump back.
You nearly had me, Raziel. But this is not where or how it ends. Fate promises more twists before this drama unfolds completely.
Redeemer and Destroyer, Pawn and Messiah. Welcome
time span, soul. Welcome to your destiny.
And exactly like this, yet with a little less polygons, ended the first Soul Reaver. In the game itself, the fight was a little more stretched out and boring than in the video, but here we had a pool of health in the center, so it wasn't as tedious as for the first time when we met the Yellow Daddy. Kain skedaddles again, we, per usual, Scooby-Dooby-Doo after his sorry ass, and we even meet the deceased Mobius. Ain't much of a twist from a guy who can time travel, but maybe I'm nitpicking considering that this blew my mind so hard back in the days that I know all of the plot by heart till now. I think it's time to wrap it up, and what can I say about all of that? Well, it's a brilliant game with the fire art design, crazy lore, mind-blowing soundtrack, and unfortunately it aged very poorly. For someone without the nostalgia veil over it, it would be a torture with that morally aged camera, imprecise platforming, and fucking cubicle riddles. I mean, even the developers themselves tried to explain this by saying that each individual group was working on a separate part of the game. 3D was a new thing back then, so they decided to utilize the 3D engine 100%. And what's a better way to experience 3 dimensions if not moving 3-dimensional cubes in the 3-dimensional world? The animations were fucking insane though. Can I recommend you to play this game? Well, if you have some kind of masochistic tendencies, suit yourself. Otherwise, I would just give us a few bucks by buying this game somewhere and watch all of the cutscenes from it on YouTube. Thank you, peeps, for spending your never-returning precious time on this video. I'm very happy that we could cover the first game. I think I might take a small vacation from the Legacy of Kain stuff and talk about some other games in the meantime. I mean, it could be a little hard with the second game because in it, the developers, I suppose, understood the strongest side of Legacy of Kain, so the vids would be 50% cutscenes. But if you don't mind, just let me know. I thank you one more time for bearing with me till now. Leave this video a like and hit the subgenre button. Send it to your friends, moms, pups, grannies, gramps and all other creatures that can consume video game content on YouTube. Stay tuned because there is more to come. The other guy loves you, peeps.